this two-state solution line, right? It's the party line for a long time.
Since the 90s.
And it just hasn't borne out. I think probably everyone on all sides of this issue could agree with that. And so I wonder how you are breaking from the establishment in a way that would materially benefit the people who, frankly, like my tax dollars are.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you framed it that way, because I think there's a difference, Matt, in how you asked your question versus Emma. One is the...
The knives are out. The girls are fighting. Hassan Farmi goes for Fox News again. Mallory McMorrow went on Majority Report and Matt Bernstein. Okay, and apparently Emma Vigeland from Majority Report was brought on to the convo out of nowhere, and she played a role in apparently grilling her. Okay, and I'm very excited to watch this. I'm actually super stoked to watch this. Tom Hardy is a Kneecap fan. Yeah, we know.
Because I don't think anybody should live in fear of being bombed or killed.
Okay, what about Iranians? What about Palestinians? What about the Russians? Are you in favor of sending the Iron Dome to the Palestinians? If she says yes, that's awesome. That's kind of based. I'm not going to lie.
I would look at how do we support defensive systems for Palestinians? How would we support defensive systems for Lebanese?
Should they get an Iron Dome too, the Palestinians?
Well, let's talk about that as a conversation.
Well, I mean, hello. For anyone who hasn't been following recent left-wing political Twitter drama, or who doesn't keep up with the iconic drag queen Lady Bunny, who posted about said drama on Instagram, this has been a long time coming. Allow me to explain. After I interviewed Dr. Abdul El Sayed, a progressive candidate running for U.S. Senate in the state of Michigan, his Democratic primary opponent, Mallory McMorrow, reached out to me saying that she would like to be interviewed. I was honestly a little surprised by this, given that Mallory and I have some key policy disagreements. In her race, Mallory is running on the standard Democratic liberal Zionist position of, two-state solution, fund the Iron Dome, but Netanyahu bad, but also no sanctions about it, etc. She's also not running on Medicare for all. But I wanted to do the interview so I could ask her about those positions. Her team and I set a date and a time for the interview, and after I submitted a topic list, which included healthcare and foreign policy, they canceled and offered no time to reschedule. I will say, and I don't want to assume intention, and I'm willing to be wrong, but I do kind of wonder sometimes if, because of how I present and the fact that I'm so open about who I am, that people just think I'm like the gay guy,
Not as big as a news story in terms of the grand scheme of things. No, I know the LA. First of all, the Long Island Railroad is very important to me. The LIRR is very important to me personally. Okay, so in the grand scheme of things, this is very much an important story in the Hasanabi universe. Okay? I need you to understand that. You guys know I've taken it many a times and I love it. Okay? It's choo-choo time. We will talk about it. We will definitely talk about that. And we'll talk about the discourse surrounding it because this is nasty. A lot of liberals are showing their fucking asses about labor unions. It's disgusting. Like this idea that it's totally transactional, that like liberals should actually drop labor unions because they didn't sufficiently support Biden after Biden showed a lot of after Biden aided the labor unions is disgusting. Okay, you don't support labor unions because they're left or right. You support them because it's just nastiness.
Who will talk about gay things and not much else. And not to be too Sex in the City about it, but I can't help but wonder if they reached out to me thinking I'd just asked Mallory about her LGBT record, But in any case, I tweeted that I was disappointed that her team had canceled, and the tweet quickly got traction, and within a couple hours, her team reached out and her schedule had opened back up and we were back on. So I don't know, maybe an honest scheduling error, maybe not. Make of it what you will. I had my good friend and host of the Majority Report, Emma Vigeland, join me for this interview. Love her so much. And without further ado, State Senator Mallory McMorrow, welcome to A Bit Fruity.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited. I've been following you for years, by the way, so this is very exciting for me.
Oh, wow, that means so much to me. Seriously though, I know we had like all of this like scheduling drama, and I know in the wake of all of that, you could have very easily just been like, I'm not going to do this one, and it would have made sense to me. So it really does mean a lot to me that you're here today. And I also know that like a lot of Michigan voters listen to this podcast, might see this, and I think they're probably really grateful that you're here.
Absolutely. And thank you for rolling with us. I mean, balancing, running a state.
Why do people talk shit about my background and then Mallory McMorrow's background is the fucking same? What the hell is that?
Statewide campaign. I'm the state Senate majority whip. So I've got that whole job and I have a 5-year-old. So our schedule, my scheduler is everything. She manages to piece it all together. But I'm really grateful that you rolled with us to make it work.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get into it. State Senator Mallory McMorrow, you are in this 3-person primary race.
He kind of sounds like Daily Dose of the internet, no?
For the U.S. Senate representing Michigan, that's really captured the attention of the country. And I want you to help us characterize it a little bit for people who might be hearing about this race for the first time. You have these 2 opponents, right? On one hand, you have Haley Stevens, who is the AIPAC endorsed, super pro-Israel, sort of an extension of like Chuck Schumer's brand of the Democratic Party, I'd say, pretty old guard. Haley Stevens was notably booed at her own Michigan Democratic Party convention recently. I'll throw a video in there if I can find it.
You suck. That's crazy.
Which is pretty amazing. And then on the other side, you have Dr. Abdul El-Sayed, who we interviewed on the show a few weeks ago. Dr. El-Sayed is a very progressive candidate, wrote a book on Medicare for all, very pro-Palestine. And I think, and please feel free to dispute this characterization, that most people view you as like someone in the middle. So I was wondering if you could first just like define yourself in the context of this race.
For sure. So to put the race into perspective, Michigan has an open U.S. Senate seat. Gary Peters is not seeking re-election. We have Mike Rogers, in all likelihood the nominee on the Republican side, who ran against Alyssa Slotkin in 2024, lost by only 19,000 votes. The Republicans and Trump view this as their best chance to block Democrats from having a path at taking the U.S. Senate. They're spending, the Senate leadership PAC announced $45 million that they're going to be spending in Michigan, which is more than they will spend in Georgia, Maine, Iowa, Alaska, New Hampshire. So this is it. So it makes sense that this has sort of captured the attention of the country, and we have a fiercely competitive Democratic primary.
You do. I should add, so people know, sorry, don't mean to cut you off, but it's like, depending on what poll you look at, which are coming out like relentlessly, it's like neck and neck with the 3 of you.
Yeah, and I think that's a good thing. But your characterization is right. What I firmly believe is that the Democratic Party needs a reckoning, that the old guard establishment of the party has really let us down. The first question I was asked when I got in a year ago was, would you support Chuck Schumer for leader? And I said, no. I was the first candidate in the country to say so. And what I know is that in Michigan, we have built a very different blueprint. So for me, I know that people want to put us into neat little lane boxes, and I just don't think that's how Michiganders think. We have people in our state who voted for both Rick Snyder, a Republican governor, and Gretchen Whitmer. We have people who voted for Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump. This is a state where you don't have to register by party, and people tend to vote for the person that they like. But of the field, I am the establishment outsider, but with a track record of actually getting real shit done. I'm the only candidate to have beaten a Republican incumbent to get into office. I took on an entrenched family legacy in my first campaign for state Senate, and I swung a district 20 points in a single cycle and broke the Republican supermajority. I then helped leverage a viral speech that I gave back in 2022 after I was smeared as a groomer and a pedophile by a colleague of mine. I opened a PAC. We raised millions of dollars. I supported a dozen other candidates and flipped the entire state Senate for the first time in 40 years.
Been there with the groomer and pedophile.
Oh, same here, actually.
Yeah. And can I tell you, like, all of your Instagram stories were truly so helpful for us. Like, you may not know this, but a lot of us in the state Senate, we've been following you for a while, kind of hitting back on a lot of the culture war bullshit.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And really.
Yeah, she's coming at it real nice.
Appreciate everyone who stood
this
their
is
ground.
Good. I mean,
amidst what I think was hopefully
she's a lot more skilled, I would say, or maybe it's her personality. I don't know what it is, but she is she's very good at how has everyone what is this? How has everyone been accused of being a pedophile? Wait, what? What the fuck does that even? Yeah, she's very good at disarming.
The height of the culture war bullshit. I'm of the belief that like so much has happened since, especially to like wreck Americans' lives economically, that even the most sort of ardent like anti-drag brunch people are now kind of like, I don't got time for that, you know?
I will never forget, there was a press conference Tudor Dixon tried to hold in the middle of the 22 cycle. She had all these people, and, you know, it was under the guise of protecting girls in sports. And she made this radical claims about what was happening in the state. And there was this incredible local news broadcast that it talked about her press conference. And then the reporter pressed her, can you provide a single example of somebody being hurt in sports in Michigan? And she said no. And then they cut away to a protester who was like, I just need affordable housing. Like I can't afford anywhere to live. And I think that's why, you know, the speech that I gave then blew up the way that it did, because I made a point of saying people who are different are not the reason your healthcare costs are too high. And we can't let people who are hateful people distract from the fact that they're not actually doing anything to help you.
Guys, you can't do this thing, okay? You have to take this in stride, okay? This is a person who has literally straight up compared me to Nicolas Fuentes, okay? And I'm not, as aggressive in my commentary against her. You guys can't do that, okay? Because then we look fucking crazy. If she looks good in an interview and you are just like, she's a snake, don't trust her, all this shit, like, I understand why you don't like her, but you have to be normal. You can't look abnormal. You can't look weird, you know?
Yeah, and I want to talk about some of those economic issues, namely healthcare. I know going into this, we said we want to talk about foreign policy and healthcare, because especially, you know, if you're representing Michigan on the national stage, then, you know, these are things that people really care about. So Senator McMorrow, with regard to healthcare, you support a single payer option, which is different from something like Medicare for all or universal healthcare. I wanted to play a clip for you that's gotten some traction of you speaking about what you see as the risks of universal healthcare, and just ask you more about that.
Sure.
Also, you're new to the pod and learning that I don't have a producer. So when I say like, I'm going to throw something up on the screen, what I mean is I'm going to play the video from my phone into the microphone.
Oh, that's incredible. So, okay, perfect.
You know, sorry, you're welcome.
Some people conflate Medicare for all with universal healthcare. But Medicare for all, when it's actually defined, is one singular government-run healthcare system that we are all on. Now, I want you to imagine what that would look like with Donald Trump and RFK Jr. at the head of it.
Emma, do you want to take this?
Yeah, sure. So State Senator McMorrow.
Oh! Get in there, Emma!
It feels like the implication of your framing there is that government healthcare programs shouldn't be trusted because Trump and RFK Jr. are leading them. Are there other programs, specifically healthcare programs or social programs, you think should be cut because Trump and RFK Jr. are currently in charge of them?
No, that's not at all what I intended. And, you know, I fundamentally and firmly believe that we need access to universal healthcare, and we need to get there as quickly as possible. In the state Senate, I have led on efforts to codify the Affordable Care Act on the state level, so you can't lose your healthcare with a pre-existing condition. We repealed our 1931 abortion ban. We helped expand a program called RX Kids statewide, which is a cash grant program for new moms and babies. We've expanded access to doulas and to midwives. We've done so much because this is such a big issue. And what I know is that people can't afford to wait. The idea that...
She looks so intense. She is not there to play no games. She's like, nope, I'm here. Yeah, your track record's fine in the state level. Why did you say that?
We should hold out just for one solution, to me, is just not what I've experienced in governing. You know, the next U.S. senator would be one of 100 members, and the votes for a true single payer system simply aren't there. Now, there have been multiple states who have implemented state level public options. And in those states, not only have they vastly reduced the rate of uninsured to next to zero, they've also reduced the cost of private health insurance. That is something that, as we look to how do we get to universal healthcare as quickly as possible so people aren't going bankrupt, they are not denying themselves care. You know, I am somebody who graduated from college right into the recession in 2008 wanting to be a car designer. So I did not have healthcare. I couldn't stay on my parents' plan until 26. Having that real public option, anybody who wants to opt into Medicare, regardless of age, can, while also ensuring if you want to keep your plan through your union or through your employer, that you can, I believe, is the best way that we can get to universal healthcare as quickly as possible.
We can talk about, I think, the merits of the public option versus Medicare for all, but the public option would still be run by Donald Trump and RFK Jr. or whoever ends up being a Republican if they take over. So, additionally, the entire Republican Party is against Medicare for all and single payer. So it's almost an assertion that Democrats shouldn't pursue Medicare for all or even single payer because potentially Republicans could get back into power and control it. I mean, that is the implication of what you said.
I don't think that it is. I think that's a mischaracterization.
How would you characterize it then?
You talk a lot on the trail and you want to make some jokes and you want to help people understand where you're coming from. This is an administration that has slashed.
That's, I mean, it was just jokes. It was just jokes. She's not anti-Medicare for all. It was just jokes. What is the joke then? I mean, you're defeated at that point, right? If you're a politician and you're talking about how we can't pursue a very popular healthcare provision because, like, you know, Republicans might take it over. It's like, okay, Social Security exists. Like, Republicans have been president. They can't take it away. The fuck does that even mean? But obviously, fundamentally, when you say explain the joke, then it's over. It's there's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do. When you turn around and you say, explain the joke then, I don't understand it. It's the most annoying thing that people can do. People do it to me all the time. It is an undefeated method, okay, of just hooking someone.
Access to mifepristone. This is an administration who intentionally withheld SNAP benefits, even though we had the funding to pay for it in Michigan. That's 1 million kids who are on SNAP. Right.
Yeah, but you would never say that, we shouldn't have SNAP because, inevitably, we shouldn't expand SNAP because inevitably Republicans will control it, right?
Now, I don't think we should shy away from the incredible damage that this administration is inflicting on government programs. Here in the state, I'm on the Appropriations Committee in the state Senate. We are having to backfill state Medicaid because they've vastly slashed access to funding for us. The one big awful bill means that Michigan stands to lose 13 rural hospitals. We've already seen a birthing center close in the Upper Peninsula. Now women have to drive more than 50 miles to give birth. I don't believe that it's out of line to highlight, hopefully with some humor, we're allowed to laugh sometimes, some of the incredibly damaging things that this administration has done, while we are also advocating for what we would do if we get back into power.
The argument that she presented wasn't that this administration is like... The argument that she presented wasn't specifically about this administration's actions taking away people's health care. You used that as a reason as to why we shouldn't pursue government-controlled health care. That's a very specific criticism against government initiatives in general, and specifically against Medicare for all.
Propose and how we're going to get there. How do you build a coalition to actually
implement
I love
jokes.
Policy?
I'm a jokester. I love fibbing. I love hyperbole. As you guys know, it's one of my biggest flaws. My biggest personality flaws is that I love laughter. Okay? Chat hates it. But there is a difference, right? When you're making a joke, there's an intentionality behind it. There's a direction on the joke. I'm not going to say you can't make jokes about denying people access to healthcare. It can be very funny. Comedy is legal, okay? Comedy.
Legalize comedy.
Legalize comedy. Comedy is legal. I don't do the jokes of bourgeois decadence. I think that you just didn't, I guess you didn't mean it. I guess you said that, but you didn't mean it. And I think that's what she's trying to do right now. Wait, no, Dr. Jihad is a joking guy. You can't be real. No, Dr. Jihad is very real. Nothing I've ever said as Dr. Jihad has been a joke. I don't fib. I don't joke when I'm Dr. Jihad. That's serious. That's me.
Restores healthcare for people as quickly as possible.
I think the rub there is just that the framing kind of undercuts the idea of universal programs because the bad party can take over at a certain point. And, I want Democrats to be talking about how government can provide social services for people. I think that needs to be a core part of the brand proposition. And, another part of your assertion was that Medicare for all is I wrote the quote down, one singular government-run healthcare system that we're all on. Can you elaborate on that? Because Medicare for all is a replacement for private insurance with a single government payer, like Medicare is currently. It's not government-run healthcare.
Sure, you're right. And I have taken that feedback to heart. We campaign a lot. And I do talk about this differently now so that it doesn't come across as callous. And you're right. A single payer system, Medicare for all, in the legislation as it has been introduced and sits in the Congress right now, is a single insurance plan that would by law eliminate private health insurance.
The public option, can you expand on how you would solve some of the same, say, enrollment issues that you see with Obamacare? A Medicare for all plan would promise no premiums or deductibles. It would create a single payer, the largest amount of leverage to keep costs down. That is why people want to go big with Medicare for All. A public option is an improvement, of course, on the private marketplace and the Affordable Care Act, but that would still involve premiums and deductibles. Why not go all the way to Medicare for All?
Yeah, I hear you on the vision. I 100% do. And what I know after almost a decade as experience in a legislator is that you need to push as far as you possibly can while building the coalition of votes to actually get it across the line. And the support for a true single payer system isn't there yet. It just isn't. So for me, what I know, I have constituents today.
Bullshit. That's not real. That's not real.
Who have canceled their ACA plans because they see their premiums have gone through the roof, and they're just praying that they don't get sick and don't go to the hospital. Allowing for anybody who wants to opt into Medicare regardless of age helps us get on the path to universal health care. And I'm also somebody who fundamentally believes states are the laboratories of democracy. This is where we try things out. This is how our country was established. There has only been one state who's ever attempted a true single payer system, and it was Vermont. And they abandoned that 15 years ago when they couldn't figure out how to pay for it, and they couldn't figure out the implementation, where we now have 3 states who are running public option systems within their states that have gotten us much closer to the goal of universal health care. So that's how I approach policy: is what's our goal and how can we actually ensure that we get there as quickly as possible?
Moving on, Mallory, an issue that's extremely close to my heart as a Jewish person,
better things are not possible. People don't have an appetite for this. I think it's bullshit. Okay. I think that's bullshit. I'm gonna be honest. It's just, I'm coming at it with the most with maximum electability in mind. Okay, well, we need bold thinkers. Okay, the time for trailing the Republicans along was for yesteryear. Okay, the time for real bold changes is now.
a tax-paying American as a human being is that of Palestine.
I despise when people automatically come to the bargaining table. I despise when people come to the bargaining table and immediately shank their own position. Public option would be an improvement over what we have now, but why would you even start down with a watered down proposal, negotiate with the maximum? Exactly. It's ridiculous, and every Democrat that does that is a snake in the grass. Remember that. Every Democrat that does that, when any Democrat that says, oh, this is unfeasible, is doing so for a reason, okay? It's unbelievably disingenuous. Especially on this issue, right? This is a doable thing. We're not talking about the abolition of the commodity form, okay? That's not, there are obviously ideas that that might not be electorally permissible, or ideas that are totally out there, okay? Like the work abolition, right? You're not coming in and saying we got to, forcibly seize the means of production, okay? We're implementing a dictatorship of the proletariat in this election cycle. That's not that's maybe a little bit too much of a radical idea,
It was actually just the other night at a UN commemoration of the anniversary of the Nakba in 1948, when Israel displaced more than 750,000 Palestinians who still.
This is like, as far as the healthcare conversation goes, like, I did not like her answer. I think she was competent. She held off the attacks fairly well. If you're knowledgeable on the issue, you look at it and you understand exactly what she's saying, where she's coming in and saying like, no, better things are not possible. We should just like water down our own side's argument because there's real electoral concerns or something like that. It's bullshit. But I think to the onlookers who are not initiated with this kind of politics, she probably held frame here. Okay, on the optics side, liberals will watch this. No, liberals will absolutely watch this interview, and their takeaway will be, "Wow, she's brilliant. This is our candidate for sure." Okay, they love when someone says, "Oh, you guys are just naive radicals." Okay, oh, you want some pie in the sky idealism here with your advocacy for a system that is not even as comprehensive as like a nationalized healthcare service that exists in the UK. You know, it's ridiculous.
Don't have the right to return home. So when considering people who are running for federal office, people who could determine the future of the U.S. relationship to Israel and the effect that that will have on Palestinians, now the Lebanese people and Iranians, I know this issue is one people who listen to the show, for one, care a lot about. And of course, you are also running in Michigan, which has a large Arab population, which, you know, that was very consequential in the 2024 election when many of them withheld their votes from Kamala Harris as part of the uncommitted movement. So I want to make sure people have a really clear understanding of your position. Also, for context, your opponent on one side, Abdul El Sayed, he opposes all funding to Israel. And your opponent on the other side, Haley Stevens, is endorsed by AIPAC. Enough said there. So I wanted to highlight your approach and ask you about it. On your website, you write, quote, "The path to lasting peace between Israelis and Palestinians lies in a two-state solution, with a democratic Jewish state of Israel existing safely along a democratic Palestinian state." You write that the flow of aid to Gaza, quote, "needs to be restored," that Israel's expansion into the West Bank, quote, "must stop," and that Hamas must, quote, "disarm and demonstrate a commitment to a peaceful and democratic Palestinian state."
I don't think Mallory would ever do an interview with me, but I would love to do it.
You also support funding
but I guess
for
at this point, I'm functionally a campaign surrogate, so it's a little bit different.
Israel's defensive weapons infrastructure, you know, things like the Iron Dome. Is that all correct?
Increasingly, that's changed.
Okay.
And you even see Netanyahu now vocally saying that he himself wants to cut off relying on aid from other countries. So I would support Israel continuing to be able to purchase systems like the Iron Dome, defensive systems.
Your weed is too loud now, Hasanabi. The mainstream Dems will not engage. Even Hannity won't. I know, it's kind of fucking bullshit that Hannity won't, though. Because, like, if I'm the spokesperson for the Democratic Party, Hannity should destroy me in the marketplace of ideas. I'm ready, dude. I'm fucking ready to be destroyed, Hannity. I'm ready!
But I think it's in the best interest of the United States in reducing that aid and allowing Israel to do that on their own.
But I mean, as of now, though, your policy that you're running on, just so voters are like clear, is that you support sort of the defensive infrastructure. So we wanted to ask you a couple questions about your stance here. First, regarding what a two-state solution means to you and how that could affect your policymaking.
The two-state solution debate is something where I really do think that there are a lot of Democrats are kind of behind the reality on this issue. So I just want to talk in terms of practicalities. Where would you, in terms of like your ideal two-state solution, draw the borders? Because as you know, Israel's been illegally occupying East Jerusalem and the West Bank since 1967 in violation of UN law. And since then, 700,000 Israeli settlers have moved into the Palestinian territories in East Jerusalem.
Bro, is she gulping every time Emma starts speaking? That's crazy. Okay, Emma. Oh my God, Emma Vigeland. What a fucking nightmare. Oh my Lord.
And the West Bank and have stolen Palestinian land. So my question about the practicality of a two-state solution is, how would that happen? Would your scenario require removing the 700,000 illegal settlers living on Palestinian land?
So, Emma, what you're asking is, I don't believe the role of a U.S. senator. I believe that a senator should have a role in allowing the United States to facilitate the negotiation between the Palestinians and the Israelis that gets to a place where there's long-term peace, security, and self-determination for Palestinians and long-term peace and security and self-determination for Israelis, who all live in the region and have to figure out a way to coexist where they're not killing each other. I don't believe that it's the role of a legislator to determine where those borders are or how it coexists, but it should be our role to de-escalate the conflict. I do not support the Netanyahu government. I think that they have continued to push well beyond what is proportionate, what is rational in response to the October 7th attacks in a way that is horrifying to watch. I mean, bombing Gaza to be completely uninhabitable, the settler violence that you see, that while it is technically illegal, they are certainly doing nothing to stop it and continue to.
Okay, I'm guessing the pin is a reference to the mass shooter going on down the street from Hassan. It's not down the street from me. I think it's in the San Diego Islamic Center. That's a little ways away from down the street from me. And I don't know what's going on but we'll get to that later. Okay.
Encourage it. And Matt, you brought this up particularly related to our state. We have a very large Lebanese population. 1 million people in Lebanon have been displaced. And I know a friend of mine who's running for state senate mentioned to me that his grandmother's home in Lebanon has been bombed 3 times, and that somehow she's still in good spirits about the fact that she is alive when many of her neighbors are not. So for me, I'm somebody, I bring a background in industrial design into how I pursue policy, which is starting with the outcome and then backing into how do you help facilitate making that happen. What I believe is that there is broad shared beliefs across our constituents in both the Jewish community, the Arab community, and frankly, for people who are not directly impacted by this, who are horrified beyond belief at the ongoing violence, suffering, chaos, who simply want the violence to stop and see the United States has played a role in continuing the violence when we need to play a role in ending it.
And I hear what you're saying about you don't want to draw specific boundaries. I understand that. But I think it's important to dissect what a 2-state solution would actually entail. Do you believe that should involve some sort of reparations for Palestinian land that has been stolen? Because increasingly, if you look at the map of the West Bank, it's being taken over.
Yes, a 2-state solution is pure. I mean, I would say it was like an idealistic concept, even in the 90s, when there was like approximately, I believe in 88, there was like 80,000 or so settlers. That still would have been a very difficult process of taking away that land and like redistributing it to the Palestinians. But it's a fantasy. It's the reason why people still say it in 2026 is because it's a great way to shut your opposition to fuck up, because most people are oblivious to the realities on the ground. There is a de facto 1 state right now. This is a tough pill to swallow for everyone on both sides, but there is a de facto 1 state, and that sovereign state is an apartheid state. It's the state of Israel. So I think it's a much more productive way to tackle this issue as an end to the occupation and an end to the apartheid. The abolition of the occupation of Israel and the abolition of the apartheid is the appropriate way to go about it, given the realities on the ground.
By Israel. So there would have to be either a forcible removal, or Palestinians would have to be crammed into even smaller and smaller territory.
Yeah, and again, I go back to the United States role. A legislator's role should be in helping to facilitate between the negotiators and something that allows for that peace and security for Palestinians along.
Yeah, it's by cutting funding. It's by turning Israel into a pariah state to apply maximum pressure peacefully, right, through peaceful means, which of course includes an arms embargo across the board, no defensive weapons, no offensive weapons, an arms embargo, not even just like denying them free money so they can purchase the weapons. I'm talking no weapons whatsoever, and then potentially sanctions, because that's what we would do, or that's what we did do to apartheid South Africa, right? This is part of the reason why a lot of these guys refuse to reckon with what it means to be an apartheid state. That's why they act silly and naive when it comes down to the recognition of Israel's apartheid, right? It's bullshit. That's why they don't want to say genocide either. There's a reason for it, because genocide comes with legal restrictions, a just demand for legal restrictions. Apartheid comes with demands for restrictions. You can't, on the one hand, say Israel's doing a genocide, Israel's an apartheid state, and on the other hand go, and we still have to give them weapons. We have to sell them weapons. No, you don't give any fucking weapons to a country that's doing a genocide. You don't offer them any economic aid. It doesn't work that way, right? And that's why they have a hard time openly saying the truth that many people now understand, at least knowledgeable people understand.
Alongside Israelis. I don't believe that is my role to dictate, to put on to the people who do live there what they should be fighting for their own lives.
I want to push back, though, a little bit on...
I would go a little bit harder. I'm gonna be honest.
Senator, sort of, you're presenting it as like a little bit detached from the peace process there, whereas like we know that Israel's sort of violent and ongoing expansion now.
Yeah, if you got a bad kid, if you got a child that's beating the shit out of people, and the school tells you like your kid's beating the fuck out of people, you don't give the kid a gun. You don't keep telling him go off, do whatever you want to do. Go do a school shooting. Like, it's not how that works, okay?
into Lebanon, as you mentioned. It's only possible because of
She's kind of right that it shouldn't be the U.S.'s role to tell Palestinians what solution they have. I know, but she's doing politicking there, okay? She's trying to say, oh, I'm an isolationist. She's not, okay? No American senator is a fucking isolationist, okay? Ask her about Taiwan to see if she has any takes on what kind of intervention we must do in Taiwan, right? It's just like, you don't have kids. True. I don't know what it takes to be a parent. I don't have children. You probably should give a gun to a bad kid who's like bullying the fuck out of all the other children, right? So he can be more efficient in his bullying. Yeah, she says, oh, we can't, speak over the Palestinians there, because the real point that she's making is we should just stay out of this conversation. She's trying to angle it in a way.
ongoing bipartisan U.S. support. And so I wonder, if you continue to support defensive weapons infrastructure to Israel, how you see yourself as utilizing any of the leverage you could have as a U.S. senator.
I think here, I'm going to give you guys the method, okay? The interrogation method in this circumstance should start with terms that both parties agree to. Apartheid and genocide. Do you believe Israel committed a genocide? Do you believe Israel's an apartheid state? Or if you want to be even stronger in the way that you, present this question, you say, do you agree with virtually every humanitarian rights organization and the ICC and the ICJ that Israel is an apartheid state? Do you believe in do you agree in the United Nations recognition that Israel is an apartheid state? Because these are all very important institutions that have decided since 2021 and as recently as 2024 that Israel is maintaining an apartheid. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, same with the genocide distinction down to B'Tselem, the Israeli Human Rights Organization, and all these other international human rights organizations. Do you agree with their assessment that Israel has conducted a genocide? So you have to define those terms first and foremost. You have to have that conversation with the opposition, and then you move off of that, right? Because once you do that recognition, once you agree that Israel has committed a genocide and Israel is an apartheid state, then you can continue asking these questions like, why do you think, would you have been in favor of giving Nazi Germany anti-aircraft weapons when the Allied forces were bombing Dresden, for example? There were civilians in Dresden. Do you agree that Nazi Germany should have gotten anti-aircraft defense systems? Do you believe Russia should get anti-drone defense systems from the United States of America? Should Russia get an Iron Dome? I mean, there's Russian civilians. Do you think the IRGC deserves the Iron Dome as well? So those are, that you can have that conversation after, right? What happens if she says yes to those questions? She won't. But even if she says yes to those questions, then you could continue having a conversation. It's like, okay, that's very bold. Will you push for legislation to make that happen? At that point, she's like in uncharted waters. And this is something this is something that's just not, she's never going to fucking entertain, even though she does briefly entertain it. Because once she says that, and she literally does say, it's interesting, I would have a conversation about that. I know. I saw the brief, the brief intro where she does say, oh yeah, that could be a interesting thing to get the Iron Dome to the Palestinians. You say, what is an easier way to stop the bloodshed? What is an easier way to stop the bloodshed? To remove all weapons that we're giving, to do an arms embargo in Israel, or to give the Iron Dome to both sides of a conflict? Because there's obviously a much easier solution to this problem. The solution to the problem is not more guns. You can also turn it back on the domestic front, where you say, what do you think is a better way to solve the gun violence problem? To give every teacher a gun, or to create additional restrictions in the purchase of arms? You're a Democrat, even in the state of Michigan, where universal background checks is 90%. It's a 90% issue. It's a 90-10 issue. I don't think that she's in favor of arming people more. I think she's in favor of taking away the guns. Okay? This is a very reactionary framework that she doesn't even believe in. She does not believe in giving the fucking Palestinians an Iron Dome. I am. I'm in favor of taking it away from Israel and giving it to the Palestinians, for the record, just so we're clear. Okay? I'll say it. I say take the Iron Dome from Israel and give it to Gaza. They need it far more than Israel does. Okay. That's my take. That's not her take, though. Okay. I don't think that's her take
in this situation. And I guess
So, Matt,
how you think, because like this 2-state solution line, right? It's the party line for a long time.
Since the 90s.
And it just hasn't borne out. I think probably everyone on all sides of this issue could agree with that. And so I wonder how you are breaking from the establishment in a way that would materially benefit the people who, frankly, like my tax dollars are killing.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you framed it that way, because I think there's a difference, Matt, in how you asked your question versus Emma. One is the...
the knives are out. The girls are fighting. Hassan Farmi clips for Fox News again. Yeah, sure, whatever. I don't give a shit.
Framework of the borders of the nations.
Yes, dude. One side is doing the genocide. The other side is being genocided. Which side deserves the fucking defensive weapons more? Do you think it's the side that is doing the genocide that deserves the defensive weapons? Or do you think it's the side that is being genocided that deserves the defensive weapons? From a purely moral perspective, which side in this equation deserves it more? What kind of fucking stupid shit is this?
The other is, what leverage does the Congress have to help facilitate this negotiation? I would have voted alongside the 40 out of 47 senators who voted in the past Sanders resolution blocking arms sales. And let's acknowledge how stunning it is that a year ago, that number was significantly smaller than it is today. My views on this have evolved because the reality on the ground has evolved. It has been horrifying to watch how Benjamin Netanyahu and the far-right government have prosecuted this ongoing war against Palestinians.
War or genocide?
Against Yemenis in a way that the United States cannot support. Simply put, the Congress holds the power of the purse, holds the power of funding and resolutions, and that is where I would view my role in coming in is keeping an open door to everybody within our community. Michigan is a very diverse state where we have the largest Arab American population living side by side with a very significant Jewish population. And Matt, your question is the universal truth. I was in an Uber a couple of weeks ago, and the driver said almost exactly what you said, which is, how can our country afford to continue bombing other countries when we can't pay for our own kids? That is where we need to step in and say enough is enough, and we need to bring this to an end.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that how in Michigan you have people of different faiths, Muslim, Jewish people, Arab people living side by side. I think it's very American to believe in multiculturalism as an ethic, in that it engenders understanding, and when you can live alongside people who maybe have different views than you, it reduces the capacity for hatred. It's why we don't believe in things like segregation and apartheid, but Israel is an apartheid state. And, you know, when we're talking about who has the right to have land and to live in peace, I mean, we're recording this right now on the anniversary of the Nakba, and the Palestinians have been ethnically cleansed since, you know, you could say 1948, but prior to that, from the land that is now Israel. Do you not believe in multiculturalism as an ethic for Israel and Palestine? Because a shared land would be, in my view, American, and also the solution that we saw in South Africa that could provide fairness for everybody involved.
Yeah, and it may very well be. You know, there are...
May very well be? What does that mean? By the way, this is why people who are pro-Israel are actually not even low-key, but high-key, unbelievably anti-Semitic, okay? Or at the very least, unbelievably Islamophobic. The notion that like Jews and non-Jews can just simply never get along is, again, both anti-Semitic and also unbelievably Islamophobic, or at least anti-Arab, right? It's just crazy. It's a crazy argument to make. It quite literally is the segregationist argument in the United States of America. Separate but equal, please. We just can't have these. We can't have our kids go to school in the racial jungle, which, of course, famously was what Joe Biden said when desegregation was taking place. But it's a ridiculous argument to land on in 2026. It's crazy. We simply cannot have these fucking Arabs live with Jews. They just can't. They can't act right. That's the argument you're making. That's ridiculous. That's an unbelievably racist fucking argument. What are you saying? Like, oh, Jews just can't live with their neighbors? Is that what we're doing? Or is it that the Arabs can't live with their Jewish neighbors? It's bullshit.
People who have worked on this issue for far longer than I have. And I always try to check my own bias at the door. I can't possibly understand what it is like to live in the middle of the Middle East. I can't imagine what it's like to have my home stolen from me, to have my family killed. And I want to leave the door open. I think it's important for anybody who holds the role of a senator as a legislator.
Yeah, it's also a historical too, because Arabs and Arab Jews as well, but like just Jews and Muslims lived in this region in relative peaceful harmony for centuries, okay? It is Israel that has fucked the entire thing up. That's what's so crazy about it. Like, the Ottoman Empire was literally a fucking safe haven for Jews that were experiencing pogroms in Christian countries, okay? Jews would escape Christian countries, Christian areas where they were constantly in the crosshairs, and they would come to the Ottoman Empire as a safe haven, okay? And that process went on for hundreds of years, and they lived in relative peace and harmony amongst the population. In comparison to you know, Spain, for example, it's just like it's totally ridiculous and absolutely ahistorical to make it seem as though there is this like newfound Arab anti-Semitism that actually wasn't new at all. That there wasn't any enmity, or this enmity is not an enmity towards Israel, which bills itself as the Jewish state, okay? But this was an ancient anti-Semitism that always existed amongst the Arabs. It's fucking bullshit. It's not real. It's a way for also Europeans specifically to abdicate their responsibility or to whitewash or launder their personal. Yeah. Jews were forced to pay a special tax that put them as second-class citizens. Oh, shit, dude. No way. I didn't realize it was just a Jewish-specific tax. Hey, maybe you should take that up with Jewish historians, okay, that have written extensively about the fact that the jizya was across the board for non-Muslims. Muslims had a separate tax that they were paying under the Ottoman Empire, and then also additional amenities were given to the non-Muslims where they didn't have to serve in the military. That's number one. Number two, it was still an unbelievable safe haven in comparison to Europe where they were getting fucking slaughtered. Yes, it wasn't peak wokeness for 2026. It was peak wokeness for, you know, the 15th century and the 16th century. No one is saying it's fucking woke in comparison to modern day existence, dumbass. Yeah, but the idea that everything was fine was just not true. It abso-fucking-lutely was in comparison to what was going on in Europe. That's why Jews would escape Europe to come to the Ottoman Empire. You're wrong. And yes, you made it seem like it was just a Jewish-specific tax because you're a little bitch, okay? It wasn't. It was literally infinitely comparable to the Inquisition or the pogroms that Jews were withstanding. And two, it was a non-Muslim specific tax, as in exchange for, or rather than doing the Muslim tax, non-Muslims would pay the non-Muslim tax. That's it. That's what jizya is. Like, this is so funny. It's like, oh, dude, you're fucking paying taxes. Like, it's crazy. Like, you would never make this argument. You would never make this argument for anything else. You would never make this argument for, like, chattel slavery in comparison to being able to live freely in a society with discrimination, right? It would be the equivalent of, like, comparing the end of the Underground Railroad, Canada, to, you know, not just the Jim Crow South. I'm talking specifically chattel slavery in the South. That comparison is ridiculous, right? No one is saying that racial discrimination in Canada at that time, while there was literally slavery continuing, chattel slavery continuing in the fucking South, is somehow in any way, shape, or form comparable to, like, the current liberal society and the racial discrimination that currently exists in liberal society. Obviously, there was racial discrimination in Canada, but it was infinitely better than being held and bound and sold as not a human being, but as property, right? Relative to the continued legalized practice of chattel slavery, of course, it was better off overall for black people to live in Canada, to escape to Canada, where slavery was abolished. even though there was still racial discrimination. That's the comparison you're making right now.
Check their own bias at the door, be open and objective. And if there is, and I've heard from both the Jewish community and the Arab community that you're right, Emma, a two-state solution has been something that has been attempted for a very long time. We have failed to accomplish that so far. Perhaps in
the second line of argumentation here for all the fucking diehards that want to engage in ahistorical nonsense, for the record, is the idea that there was still conflict against Jews. In the Ottoman Empire, there were still uprisings that took place. Of course, it was a vast empire. It was an empire after all. And of course, there were still ethnic tensions that rose from time to time, many of which was ironically still in the hands of Christians against Jews and Jews against Christians, and rarely ever Muslims, even though there were some instances where Muslims also did this. I don't know why I'm fucking talking about the history of this, by the way, but let me just like dial it back here and have her respond to Emma.
Killed. And I want to leave the door open. I think it's important for anybody who holds the role of a senator as a legislator to check their own bias at the door, be open and objective. And if there is, and I've heard from both Jewish.
No one's excusing European action towards Jews. I just reject the idea that Jews live happily in a society as second-class citizens along with others. Brother, I said relative harmony. Okay, relative. Do you know what relative means? Okay, adjusted to the current conditions, adjusted to the conditions at the time. Okay, relative peace and harmony. That's it. You refuse the premise because you understand, at least if you're a little bit knowledgeable on it, okay, you understand that it was far better overall, but you just don't want to recognize that because it doesn't suit your current argument. It is an ahistorical approach to say Jews were never allowed to coexist in relative peace in Muslim lands before Israel. It's wrong. It's objectively wrong. Bro, you're not going to win the argument. Just admit you're wrong. It's okay to be wrong. Are you talking about me or are you talking about the other person? There's no way you genuinely think that this is, the chatter. Oh, okay. This is footage from the 1890s of Jewish people living peacefully in Palestine.
15 years later, the cinema is taking its first steps. Cameramen employed by the Lumiere brothers filming at Jerusalem Station provide the first moving pictures taken in Palestine. From now on, the camera is a recording eye, and what it records is this: a society much like that of...
Yeah, the majority of Jewish scholars literally call the time under certain Arab caliphates the golden age of Judaism. Yes. It's so funny. It's just like you're denying reality, man. You're fucking denying reality. That's all this is. It's so frustrating that people are doing this 10p camera. Brother, this is literally the first camera. What are you talking about?
Damascus or Beirut.
This is 1896, man.
In an Arab city, much like any other. By the end of the 19th century, Palestine has 500,000 inhabitants, of whom 30,000 live in Jerusalem. A veiled woman, a Sunni Muslim, one of the majority. An Orthodox Jew. He too turns away from the camera. Here we have an Armenian Pope. Each of the Christian denominations has its church here in the Holy City. The holy places of the three religions are scattered across a few hundred square meters. The Great Mosque is close to Christ's tomb. Further along, at the foot of the Wailing Wall, a Jew is reciting a prayer.
Jew with a fez! Yo! Yo! That's crazy. That's a crazy sight. I didn't even know it was like that. See, I'm learning new things too.
He is wearing a Turkish tabush, and though he prays in Hebrew, his everyday language is Arabic. Jews form half the population of Jerusalem, but in the country as a whole, they make up less than 5% of the total. Christians account for 10% and Muslims 85%. All of them are subjects of the Sultan of Constantinople.
Bro, that's not uncommon. My grandpa was Jewish and Turkish. Yeah, no, there's there used to be a lot more, especially like even still living in Istanbul. a lot of Jewish Turks. I just think it's funny. I don't know. It's funny to see people wearing fezzes to me.
There are no frontiers in the Ottoman Empire. There are administrative divisions in which, in this immense territory, Palestine occupies a mere 27,000 square kilometers, made up of 3 small districts in the south of the...
But he was also crazy. He said all Greeks should have been murdered. Yeah, that's a Turk for you, okay? Yeah, again, American Jews are American first. Turkish Jews are Turkish first. That makes total sense.
The province of Damascus, the same empire in the 17th century. In the meantime, it has lost the Balkans. France and Italy have seized North Africa. England has moved into Egypt, Aden, and even Kuwait.
The first recorded video was 8 years prior to this one. That's crazy. Anyway, Palestine before Zionism, a golden age. The article covers a period of 1860s to 1910s when Jews, Muslims, and Christians were experiencing a golden age in Palestine, social life in Jerusalem, Tiberias, Hebron. Jews, Muslims, Christians lived in the same streets, shopped at the same stores, frequented the same bathhouses, shared residential courtyards. This is the type of shit that also pisses off Israelis more than anything else, because it directly undermines the argument that like Jews and non-Jews cannot get along, and that there has to be, this necessitates a Jewish ethno-state. Okay? Not only is that initial fear from oftentimes, Christian pogroms against Jews, okay, and the unbelievable amounts of anti-Semitism that existed in many Christian parts of the world, okay, that obviously is no longer as apparent. There's no like systemic discrimination that exists in the Western world largely against Jews, but it also doesn't suit modern day propaganda purposes, because the allies now for Israel are, largely majority Christian nations in the West, and the ops are majority Muslim populations. So that's the reason why they have to constantly undermine this like important period of Jewish history. Christian musicians played at Jewish weddings, Jews performed at Muslim and Christian weddings. Jews, Muslims, and Christians started going to Ottoman schools as well as all the Israelite alliance schools. Palestinians, Jews, and Christians used Muslim religious course to settle disputes amongst themselves. Jews formed business partnerships with Muslims in the wheat, livestock, and dairy industries. Muslim and Jewish children from one courtyard would defend one another against Muslim and Jewish children from another courtyard. Muslim and Jewish women also breastfed another one's babies in the event of a death or life and the mother is unable to nurse. Religious life, Jewish Arabs, like all this stuff. Zachary Foster is a historian of Palestine, has a PhD from Princeton University. I've had him on the broadcast in the past as well. He's written on Palestine before Zionism, a golden age. Many others have written about it too. It's not just him, but this kind of stuff is very frustrating for Zionists. One of the most historically illiterate attacks against Mamdani's Nakba post is outrage that he shared a Palestinian of Bosnian origin. Inaya Bushnak's family came to Palestine in the Ottoman era Muhajir migrations and became part of Palestinian society. See thread. Yeah. Anyway, let's get back to this video now.
Community and their Arab community that, you're right, Emma, a two-state solution has been something that has been attempted for a very long time. We have failed to accomplish that so far. Perhaps a multicultural solution where people are living side by side is a better solution, but I want that to come from the people who live there. It shouldn't be the role of me to assert my views on residents of another country.
Yeah, I'll move on a little bit, but I think it's just, to me, it's like, Israel, who is the occupying power in this dynamic, I mean, as recognized by international law, does not want a multicultural state. Obviously, that is, when they say like, oh, you guys want to destroy Israel, what they're talking about is a destruction of the apartheid system. What they're talking about is bringing in equality. And so I guess I want to stay on for a second, like how you could use your leverage
good
as
push.
a U.S. senator to stop this violence, which we all agree has to stop, right? Like we mentioned, you draw a distinction between Israel's defensive and offensive weapons infrastructure and currently support funding for the defensive part of that, like the Iron Dome. I think a lot of people, though, might disagree with that distinction and say that Israel's defensive capabilities enable their offensive capabilities. Like, the Iron Dome allows Israel, one might say, to operate with impunity because they don't face the same threat of retaliation. So what would you say to that?
I hear you. As you can imagine, this is a conversation we have every single day in a state like ours, where we have vastly different viewpoints on the right course of action in the Middle East. And it is the job to go in with an open mind and to listen and to make the right, most objective decision that I possibly can. And as I said at the outset, it is increasingly the view of even Netanyahu himself that he wants to be able to do it on his own and doesn't want to rely on foreign aid. There seems to be a recognition that they are going at everything they possibly can and are losing the support of the world. They're losing the support of Americans. And I will always, my pledge is to always be objective. I am not so tied to an individual viewpoint that I'm not willing to change my mind when the facts on the ground change.
I guess then to that end, why do you support funding to Israel's defense infrastructure? What is, I guess, sort of your positive vision in supporting that policy? You know what I mean?
Because I don't think anybody should live in fear of being bombed or killed. I would look at how do we support defensive systems for Palestinians? How would we support defensive systems for Lebanese?
Should they get an Iron Dome too, the Palestinians?
Well, let's talk about that as a conversation.
Well,
I mean, the horror of living in fear of being bombed constantly. Let's work with the outcome of how do we end the violence, period.
But
but then backing away from that, how do we protect people?
I think then, though, that sort of probes at like maybe we're coming from different worldviews here a little bit, because my worldview, and I think one that Emma has been talking about as well, is like multiculturalism, where we live amongst each other and where multiculturalism and a respect for one another.
Yeah, which is easier, justifying a defense package to Hamas, which, once again, I need to explain this one more time. I am in favor of giving the Palestinian resistance an Iron Dome. They deserve it a lot more than the party that is doing the genocide. Okay? I've actually jokingly talked about this in the past, didn't realize that it's now Mallory McMorrow's foreign policy position. But what's easier? She's not to the left of me. Shut the fuck up, okay? She's not to the left of me. You don't... The Iron Dome is a starting point for what I think the Palestinian resistance and the Palestinian standing military in Palestine, the nation state of Palestine, deserves, okay? That's just a starting point. But also, what's easier, you think? Restraining Israel with a weapons embargo or giving both sides defensive weapons and let them duke it out? Are we going to pave a new fucking an airfield for the Palestinian resistance as well? Are we going to give them F-35 jets? Are we going to give them guided and unguided gravity bombs so they can use it when they're striking targets with higher efficiency inside of Tel Aviv, inside of Israel? Is that what we're doing? No, of course not. This is fucking stupid.
Keeps us safe. And so like, I don't want to talk about like everyone getting their Iron Dome and everyone arming up and everyone getting more and more defensive and offensive and everyone getting more violent and everyone, I just did
They should have just asked, what other kinds of weapons would you be in favor of giving Hamas? It's so awesome. So you're in favor of giving Hamas an Iron Dome, which is, I have to say, very cool. A very cool position that I've never heard from a Senate hopeful before. That's true. This is the first time I've ever heard a Senate hopeful, a candidate that's running for Senate, say we should give Hamas the Iron Dome. Okay? Call it the Hamas Dome. Give Hamas the Iron Dome. We need to establish technological weapons parity between Israel and Hamas, and therefore they need an Iron Dome and possibly nukes as well, because Israel has nukes. So how far would you go in establishing this parity, okay, between the two belligerents? Yes, the balance must be restored. So how far would you go? Would you give them a nuke? She didn't even say it's her position. She just said, yeah, let's talk about that conversation. Like, we got to talk about how to talk about it first before she even considers it. Yeah.
Episode that actually comes out today, which I'm very excited about, with Naomi Klein, about Tucker Carlson's worldview that he has been espousing as of late. And he does view the world that way, where, in America, we should bunker down and have our white Christian nation, and everyone else is bunkered down in their own very racialized nations as well, with like tons of weapons, and we're all segregated. And like, I just find that to be such a grim reality, Yeah. And so I think, like, I'm wondering if your politics could come from a different place philosophically, where it's not like, what about funding also the Palestinian Iron Dome, where it's about taking away the Iron Dome from Israel, this thing that, in my opinion, allows them to continue operating as a genocidal apartheid state unchecked.
Well, and I think where you and I find agreement here is exactly that. Ideally, we should be at a place where we're not armed to the teeth against each other. We are a multicultural society in our country, and yet we have more guns than we have people in the United States. I sat on the state Senate floor.
Oh, now all of a sudden domestically no longer in favor of defensive weapons to the teachers and the students. Remember what I told you? This is a great analog for you to be like, okay, gun violence. This is an awfully reactionary perspective that you have here, where you're like, oh, we should have a conversation about giving defensive weapons, or we can have a conversation about a weapons embargo to Israel, right?
Below 4 men with AR-15s and full tactical vests who I promise you wanted me dead. That is not the world that I want to live in. The goal, yes, is let's have multicultural societies where we're not attacking each other. I do start at that place. And I want to make sure that I go in recognizing that I would have a responsibility. I have a responsibility today as a state senator to check my personal beliefs at the door sometimes and make decisions that are in the best interest of protecting as many people as possible.
Again, this all loops back to continue giving Israel an Iron Dome, but then also give Hamas an Iron Dome. That's awesome.
Do you think the Iron Dome is in service of that?
What is this?
I would love to get to a place where it's not needed, period, for anybody.
Okay. Do you believe Israel has committed and is committing a genocide?
Yeah, we went through this on our campaign. Based on the legal definition, I've said this, I do believe that it meets the definition. What I also heard in response from many of my constituents who had family that they lost in the Holocaust is there is such a personal, visceral reaction.
Oh shit. Oh, I didn't realize. My bad, dude. Why didn't the international authorities factor in the feelings of people who are whose grandparents passed away in the Holocaust? I didn't realize that's how it works. This argument again is so fucking stupid. You literally are saying they should get one. Okay, they should have a little bit of a Holocaust themselves as a treat. Okay, that's what the argument is. You don't get a fucking freebie. What is this conversation? Also, Matt is Jewish. The incredible argument. Okay, so what comes next for the Palestinians if they have, if you're cognizant of the reality that they have experienced the genocide? Do they get to have one of their own too? Like, how does this work? Where does this end? Again, just be fucking honest. This is what I hate about politicians. They just can't be normal. They can't be fucking honest. Everything has to be unbelievably centrist framed. Everything has to be focus tested, where you end up saying insanely stupid shit. Okay? Oh, well, you know, it just hurts people's feelings. It's a genocide, but it hurts people's feelings. Okay, I don't give a fuck if it hurts people's feelings. What do you mean? It's a genocide or not? And if you're like, well, they get to have a little bit of a genocide as a treat because, you know, their ancestors were genocided, then okay, do the Palestinians get to now genocide another group of people because they were genocided, as you recognized? Like, where does this end? Again, centrists and like liberals who try to frame this like weird middle ground on objectively black and white issues of morality end up coming up with an unbelievably unreasonable solution. It's the same fucking thing with the whole, like, well, we should give the Palestinians an Iron Dome, maybe. Okay, cool. I mean, sure. But where do we go? Which one is the easier solution? To give the Palestinians an Iron Dome, which I think they deserve, for the record, and should get one. Okay. Or restrain fucking Israel. What are we talking about? It's so stupid. You become unreasonable in your effort to appear as the most reasonable. Okay?
To that word that moves us apart from each other. And when I believe that most people,
yeah, slay it forward,
in both the Jewish community and the Arab community and people who are not impacted want the same outcome, why would we spend our time debating whether or not you agree with the definition of a word and recognizing we have the coalition who wants the same thing? How do we keep them together?
I think that the definition is important because of international law, and we're seeing right now the Trump administration and, frankly, the Biden administration was also a part of the degradation of international law and the rules-based international order. And, there was a Quinnipiac poll from August 2025. This has probably increased since then, that 77% of Democrats, over half of independents, believe that Israel is committing genocide. Don't you think that it's important to articulate that just to support international law at a time when the foreign policy of the United States, and by extension Israel, is might makes right?
I think it is important to listen to everybody that I would be asking for faith and trust to represent, and to build the coalition that.
Yeah, we gotta listen to those who are being genocided, and we gotta listen to those who are doing the genocide. Both sides have a role to play. One side is doing the genocide, the other side is being genocided. Okay, this is how it's got to go. This is again, it's not radical to just say. I think if there is a tier of radical statements that just sound objectively insane, when you're so predisposed with trying to figure a fucking comfortable middle ground, you end up coming across like the insane one. These guys literally do this all the time. Liberals do this all the fucking time. Okay? Like, I know you guys are saying be radical, be specific, be extreme. You're not. She is extreme. She's the more extreme position. I don't think our position is more extreme than this position. Okay? There is no other issue where you would be like, okay, this guy is a pedophile. Let's hear from both sides. Like, it doesn't work that way. You know what I mean? You don't go, hey, let's hear from the pedophile first. I know this is a convicted pedophile, but let's hear why he did the pedophilia, and then we'll hear the victim as well. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't fucking work that way. What are you talking about? Yeah, let's hear from Jeffrey Epstein and then from the victims as well, so that we can. And meanwhile, we're only funding Jeffrey Epstein, right? Like, it's ridiculous. You sound ridiculous. Because the other hidden premise there is the notion that sometimes mass murder and genocide is okay. And it's not okay. That is at odds with everything that people learn since birth in modern liberal society. Okay? Yeah, I have German voters and we want everyone to come together, so I can't call the Holocaust a genocide, is the argument that you're presenting here, which is an objectively insane argument. Okay? You run a pretty hardball stance when it's just a video. Would love to hear this type of pushback when they're on stream too. You got it, big dog. I mean, if Mallory McMorrow comes on stream, I'd love to have this conversation with her. You do also understand, you said, oh, with like people in Steyer and the like. I mean, with Nithya, I was, pretty stern, right? And she was seemingly in agreement with me, right? Was I not? I don't understand why people will accuse me of not doing this. Like, there are certain people to have this sort of conversation with, right? PA3 candidate Sharif Streets get out the vote rally with Senator Cory Booker and Mayor Sherrell Parker. Several empty seats can be seen as New Jersey Senator Cory Booker, Mayor Sherrell Parker. I mean, maybe it's just starting. Maybe the event has just started and that's why it's empty. But again, I don't think you guys understand, man. You guys don't realize something, okay? This is the most consequential, most impactful demographic in the district, okay? Older black voters run the show here, okay? You guys are looking at it and going, oh, it's there's no motion. There's no motion. It was an 11 a.m. Eastern rally. It's been over for 5 hours. Okay. Still, like, even when people were talking about like, oh, why are they doing this on a Monday at 10 a.m.? It's because they're all retirees. I'm far more worried about Chris Rabb's chances than many here are, it seems. Anyway, that's totally different though. That's irrelevant. Let's get back to this for now, and then we'll talk about it later.
Same goals. There is no doubt that war crimes have been committed. There is no doubt that the pain and suffering at the vast expense of our taxpayer dollars, Matt, to your point, that we continue to pay for this, needs to end. And I want to keep my people together at a moment when so much of the emphasis is on how to tear them apart.
Yeah, I don't mean to be pedantic. I really, really don't with like the genocide label. But I think to me, identifying it as a genocide is important to, like Emma said, give an internationally understood and legal label to what is currently happening to a group of people. And to me, like, anyone's feelings about that word, I think, are not as important as like recognizing what is still happening to people right now, which is a genocide under international law,
How does your family feel about it? How are those conversations going?
Well, it
Depends on the family
depends
member.
on the family member, and it's tense. But ultimately, I assume you're asking that because I'm Jewish, and you'd be right for that, because it's, especially intergenerationally, it's a tense conversation because people have different levels of Zionist indoctrination and also differing sort of proximities to the Holocaust and the timeline. But I think, though, the difficult conversations that are happening within my family are less important than the reality of what is.
She's pretty good. I hate to give her credit because that's a really good way to not respond to the question and flip it back to be like, see, you're having a hard time getting across to your older relatives, but that's not the question. You are a senator, okay? You are a senator. You have an obligation to the truth, okay? My grandparents believe a litany of different insane things, is the retort here. They don't believe in climate change. Are you going to fucking come out and be like, I don't believe in climate change because some of my voters don't believe in climate change? You would never do that. What if I have relatives that think every child should have an AR-15? Are you going to turn around and say, you know what? We have to factor into our advocacy as Democrats that maybe some children should get AR-15s. How about 10% of children that get AR-15s in school, in classrooms, as a reasonable mechanism of defense? Sometimes constituents have a litany of different insane opinions. You are placing emphasis on certain opinions, and you're giving a lot more priority to certain opinions, even if they're fucking objectively ridiculous. That's it.
Happening to the Palestinian people.
So we've had those same conversations. My husband is Jewish, and though I'm a step removed, there are certainly really, really hard conversations, to your point, among generations, within families. I respectfully...
You're a Democrat trying to win a Democratic primary in a state that literally was lost to Donald Trump because Kamala Harris wouldn't address this issue with conviction. That was in 2024. It's 2026 now. This is a 90-10 issue. There is no let's listen to the 10% here, okay? There's only let's listen to the truth here, okay? And then if you can't listen to the truth and you only make these electoral calculations, then there is no fucking need to listen to the 10%. It's ridiculous. There is no world where Mallory McMorrow would be asked what her stance is on protecting women's bodily autonomy. Okay? Israel and being pro-Israel is polling at the same level of, should we restrict abortion access? Should we restrict medical access to women when it comes to abortions? Would you say that about abortions? No, of course you wouldn't. You wouldn't go, well, some of my constituents want to stop women from being able to have abortions. We got to listen to them. You would never say that. The only reason why people say this about Israel is because of donors. That's it. That's it. That's fucking it. It's so ridiculous, dude. What the fuck? She wouldn't say, I don't want to say I support abortion rights because it offends pro-life people. So I just say reproductive health. Exactly. She wouldn't say, well, my husband is a devout Christian, and as a devout Christian, he thinks women shouldn't be able to get abortions. So it's a tough conversation in the family, and that's the reason why I have to, strategically position myself on this 90-10 issue. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. So why would you do it for Israel?
Disagree, and I believe the responsibility of a legislator, somebody who represents, I'm asking for the trust to represent 10 million people in a very diverse state that is a purple state that could very easily go to the Republicans.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Republicans, by the way, also independents, Republicans even, are no longer as favorable to Israel as Mallory McMorrow presents it.
Biggest joy in this job as a legislator is when I get to help people one-on-one and when I get to be a part of their story. And keeping coalitions together is hard work. And
I mean, this is the type of shit that I would have said, by the way, if I had the opportunity to talk to Mallory McMorrow. It'd be great. I'd be like, would you say that? Like 10% of your constituents, 10% of all Michiganders, but certainly more than 10% of all Michiganders, but 10% of Democratic Party constituents believe that there should be restrictions on abortion, would you talk about the issue of abortion with this kind of language, with this kind of wishy-washy, centrist, middle-of-the-ground language? You wouldn't. You would never do that because that would be fucking ridiculous. So why do you do that for Israel? That's the question. Why do you do that for Israel if it's also a 90-10 issue?
I believe we can respect international law and the ICC and have a legislator who respects their stances and understands that in order to move forward to the goal that I think all of us on this call share, is to keep a state like mine together and to not let this issue tear people apart. Because if we let it tear us apart, we get Mike Rogers. Trump gets a win. And there is no love lost on the other side of the aisle here, with an administration that allowed Benjamin Netanyahu to convince us to go to war with Iran.
I think, because we're still in the primary, especially, like I'm pressing, Democrats a little bit more on this because we're not yet really talking about the general. And, you say that it's more important to keep the coalition together than to sort of fracture over this one issue. But I don't know. I think for me, and I'm not trying to be antagonistic at all, I promise. But sort of when I look at what a candidate like Dr. Abdullah Sayed is doing around this issue, it doesn't feel like we actually have to abandon dignity and actual justice for Palestinians to keep that coalition together. I mean, like we said at the beginning, you guys are all, neck and neck.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I don't think we need to either. And that's not my goal at all.
I guess, we on this topic, we've exhausted it a little bit. But you also have groups like Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, and the Israeli organization itself, B'Tselem, calling it a genocide. So I read that out just because I think that when we're talking about how to keep a coalition together, the 77% of Democrats that think Israel's committing genocide, the 90% of Democrats that have a negative view of Israel or don't want to send them more money, that would, I would imagine, be the position that would be as unifying as possible, because it appears like this is kind of a consensus opinion now within
Yes! Get him, Emma!
the Democratic base.
I mean, I hear that it's reflective in...
I'm listening. I'm hearing, I'm listening, and I'm speaking. Okay? McMorrow gives me hope because it feels like the maximum amount of lying establishment Dems are willing to do and it's still not working. The problem with McMorrow is that she's not running in 2018, okay? This would be a banger. In 2018, oh my God, Resist Libs would be going crazy for her. Problem with McMorrow is she's running in 2026. The environment has shifted so much, okay? That's it. That's the problem. We have a much more diverse media diet, okay? People have an outright rejection of mainstream media. There's not a lot of credibility there. There's no universal approach to shit like this. So when you do actually have a coalition, when you do actually have consensus politics when it comes to Israel, and someone is still trying to hit the fucking middle ground, people are very skeptical of that. They go, no, I don't actually like what you're doing here. Okay, that's it. I think what a lot of people don't realize is that politics in the Democratic side have always been about agreeability, okay? Trying to be as agreeable as possible with not just like as large of a chunk of the base as possible, but like agreeable with, all the different elements, all the different stakeholders within the party infrastructure, corporations, foreign lobbies, big donors, and the voters, right? In 2026, disagreeability actually works sometimes far better than that, okay? Disagreeing with the centrist forces within the party infrastructure, disagreeing with mainstream media, disagreeing with corporations, that's actually good. That is how you establish credibility.
Polls and reading polls and asserting how campaigns should be run based off of polls is not a way that you win in a state like ours. And Matt, I hear that you don't want to talk about
polls and morality, both polls and international law and morality.
And talking about morality, Trump put out an AI-generated video of Trump Gaza and has told us we cannot afford daycare, we cannot afford Medicare, we cannot afford Medicaid. And not only that, but that states should tax themselves even more to pay for those selfish things so that we can pay for a war that he...
Oh, she's trying to bring it back to Trump. Like, we both hate Trump, right? Emma won't bite on that. She'll be like, you're running in the Democratic Party's primary. if you were to win, this would send a message about what the voters want. Your job here isn't to oppose Trump. Everyone opposes Trump. Everyone in this room opposes Trump. We are all in opposition to Trump. We are currently talking about the distinction between yourself and someone like Abdul El-Sayed and someone like Haley Stevens. Yeah, you're 100% correct. She knows that her donors don't want her to say genocide, but her constituency wants that, and that's why she's having a hard time saying it. I think this is the type of thing that should be addressed. I mean, and by the way, I held fucking Steyer's feet to the fire on this issue as well, even though he's objectively far beyond every one of the top contenders in the California governor's race. I did. I was like, you can't call it a genocide? Like, you don't think it's appropriate to call it a genocide? He's also been more responsive on this issue in the other interviews that he's conducted as well since then. But like, again, this is important. This is an important thing to call out. And the reason why it's important is because there are also additional considerations that come along when you come to that recognition, because then you look fucking ridiculous. If you call it a genocide and then you say, but we still got to give the genocidaires money and weapons, then you look fucking insane. Okay? Yeah, same with taxing the billionaires. You held him. He was so bad in those questions. Yeah, but he's now good on those questions. Ironically enough, he's changed his perspective on those questions.
Took us into because Netanyahu convinced him to do so. And every single Republican in the House and the Senate refused to vote on the War Powers Resolution. So I agree. You'll find agreement. And I live and serve in a deeply purple state that has to focus on November and Mike Rogers and the tens of millions of dollars that will be funneled into this state, because it is a coalition of
deeply purple state that also recognizes that Israel's committing a genocide. By the way, deeply purple is bullshit. It's only purple because Kamala Harris. You can literally make the argument that it's a purple state because Kamala Harris did not recognize that Israel was committing a genocide and wanted to put an end to it. That's literally the only reason why it's fucking purple. It was not purple. It was supposed to be blue. It is supposed to be a blue state, and it would have been a fucking blue state if Kamala Harris actually nipped that shit in the bud and charted a different path forward with Israel. Openly said, Israel's committing a genocide. We have to put an end to it, and I will put an end to it if I'm president. Okay? I disagree. I agree with a lot of the things that Biden did. He's my president. He's been great. But this is one issue where I think now is the time to say enough is enough. Okay? That's it.
As many people in the state as possible. You don't win in Michigan without independents. You don't win in Michigan without Republicans.
Yes, independents. Overwhelming majority of independents also fucking consider what Israel's doing to be a genocide and want to stop it. That's it. That's it. That's it. That is. You don't get to angle this as I am doing reasonable, moderate centrism to win this fucking election against Mike Rogers. This is stupid. This is dumb. This is actually worse for independents.
So it is keeping the Democrats together, keeping the Democrats engaged, keeping our diverse communities together to recognize we have the shared goals. We do. And it's hard work, and it's work that I'm in every single day. So hopefully, you see, there's not disagreement here, but it is the work every single day.
God, I would love to have Mallory McMorrow on the show.
Keeping our people together so that we don't lose a seat to somebody who would rubber stamp everything Trump wants to do, who will certainly not end this war or secure security for Palestinians anytime soon if it were up to him.
Yeah, and I'll wrap up. I know you probably have to run. Busy day running a campaign. I think neither of us would argue that like every Republican is doing all of this and worse, much worse. And none of us would argue, in favor of anything Trump is doing. I just think especially, during a primary season.
No, this is a problem, though. This is absolutely a problem. This was the problem with Trump versus Kamala Harris. When you take a wishy-washy attitude here, yeah, look, among independents, this is a new poll that just came out, 44% among independents sympathize with the Palestinians, while 29% side with Israel. 68% oppose U.S. providing military aid to Israel, while 28% support it. In case anyone cares about the general election, says Adil Haq, it's over. It's done. It's done. It's gone, baby. It's over. New York Times Siena poll, 37% of all Americans, including Republicans, sympathize more with the Palestinians in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, while 35% side with Israel. 57% oppose the U.S. providing military aid to Israel, while 37% support it. I'm a numbers guy. I chat GPT it. I grok it. It tells me you're a numbers guy. Patrick Bet David, you're a numbers guy. And it says the numbers tell me it's over. It's time. I look at my watch, very expensive watch. I look at it is Audemars Piguet. Okay? And the watch tells me it's time to say fuck Israel. Okay?
When we are, being given the chance to put our, what we think is our best Democrat forward, that we're, pushing you on some of these issues, because I think something that I'm sure you've heard is that a lot of Democratic voters feel like we have an establishment that isn't fighting sufficiently.
And I 100% agree with you.
Yeah.
This is a party that's not meeting this moment, not only on this issue.
Yeah, which is why I also will refuse to meet the moment. It's great.
But on voting rights, on civil rights, on...
Could you ever be normal again if they ever actually let you on Patrick Bet David? Absolutely not. I would probably do a Patrick Bet David voice for the rest of my life if they finally let me on Valuetainment to valuetain the Valuetainment fans, because I'm a Valuetainment fan. I would probably rewatch my Valuetainment broadcast over and over again. I'd be grokking it. I'd be doing ChatGPT.
Childcare and healthcare and housing. There's so much at stake here, which is why I'm doing what I can. I believe truly that we built a blueprint in Michigan, in the legislature, when we flipped control of the legislature for the first time in my entire lifetime, that we can take with us to Washington and build a party that knows how to fight and knows how to win and knows how to actually get things done for people.
Totally. And I just want to mention, as a New Yorker, I got to rep my city and, push back on the idea that we have to make these sort of like middle of the road concessions on some of these issues, especially like a humanitarian issue. We had Mayor Zoran Mamdani, who just won in my city, and 1 in 10 Mamdani voters also voted for Trump. There was a small but mighty MAGA for Mamdani coalition. And you know what? It's confounding, but that's, I guess,
amazing.
It's amazing. It's how the world works. And, he's someone who really didn't concede on his beliefs on any of these issues. So, of course, I would be remiss if I did not encourage you to do the same. Mallory, thank you so much for joining today. I really mean it. It's a pleasure to be able to talk to you.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you to you both.
All right. I mean, it's fine. They held her feet to the fire. I wish they were a little bit more aggro, but they were. I mean, she is purposely very agreeable. She's a much better politician than I initially thought she was. Okay. It's this. She knows exactly how to sing to the tune of liberals in the exact same way that Pete Buttigieg does. I will admit, the fact that she even went on this obviously contentious interview is good. It automatically gives her brownie points. And while they did push her, they never actually got her to flub. She was very good at deflecting away from the main points.
Thank you to you both.
Cool. And that is our interview. I've been really enjoying talking to candidates, honestly, more than I thought I would.
I hate talking to candidates. I can't believe Matt likes talking to candidates. That's crazy.
And making these sort of like auxiliary episodes has just been a sort of nice creative outlet for me, in addition to like the conceptual episodes we make over here. I want to thank Mallory.
They were a million times nicer to her than anyone who's ever talked to Abdul. Oh, for sure. But you also can't come across like a you can't come across like you you got the knives out from the start.
Again, for coming on and giving us her time.
LMFAO, man, you can't admit
she
that.
She probably knew we'd disagree on some things. She was gracious for that, truly. And I owe it to you, the listener, to say that.
Okay, her final final conclusions are just please hear me out. This is only day 3 of me trying to get you to see the truth. It's a blue sky link. I'm not clicking on that. Patrick Buick David. What's Matt's last name? Bernstein. Yeah. Carjority reported Matt Burnout Steen. Okay, stop with the car puns. Please stop with the car puns. No more. Patrick Bentley David. Oh my God.
See, man.
Updated. Mamdani stands by Nakba Day video amid fierce backlash. What backlash? Why the fuck is there any backlash to a recognition of an ethnic cleansing campaign that took place? Oh my God. Everything is busted, dude. We live in unbelievably busted times where if you fucking recognize a real ethnic cleansing campaign that took place, you're a bad guy. And the people that don't want you to recognize that ethnic cleansing campaign that took place are the good guys somehow.
Tonight, does the